All right. Hi, everyone. Good morning, and welcome to Unlocking Continuous Innovation and Driving Lasting Value with Workday. We could have called this session Workday Storytelling, because we'll be basically telling you some really good stories today. We have two leading organizations with us. Formula One, which you would have heard mentioned at the innovation keynote this morning. So very excited to hear a little bit more about that. And also Aviva. So both of them have unlocked continuous innovation. Both of them are really seasoned Workday customers. So we want to talk to them today about how they manage that and how they sustain innovation. Of course, we want to hear a little bit about AI and how that fits into the future of HR systems. But most importantly, we want to make sure you walk away today with some really practical tips and ideas and insights. So you know this can apply to you as well. And we will hang around after the session as well if you want to talk about anything in a little bit more detail. We'll do some quick introductions before we get cracking. So my name is Tina Hutchinson, and I head up the Workday practice at CloudRock. Before that, I was sitting where you are sitting today. I have been a Workday customer for many, many years. And it actually made me smile when Angelique said yesterday that the first EMEA Rising was in London 2014, when I was actually taking part in a panel like this about my own implementation at the time. So I'm really happy to be here and still be talking about Workday. Over to you, Alastair.
Hello, everyone. I'm Alastair Goss. I'm the HR systems lead at Formula One. Formula One, the commercial rights holder of the sport. So not one of the teams, but the company that organises where Grand Prix are held, televises those Grand Prix, and ultimately sells those commercial rights to sponsors and broadcasters.
And hi, everyone. My name's Godfrey. I'm the group People Transformation and Talent Director for Aviva. Aviva, FTSE 100 insurance, retirement and wealth company based in the UK. We cover the UK, Ireland, Canada.
Thank you. A little bit about our companies. CloudRock. We are the largest global Workday advisory partner. We've been founded in 2016, so we have our own 10-year anniversary coming up, which is very exciting. We implement, we optimize, we provide AMS support as well. We're headquartered out of London. We're right next to the Workday offices, but we have our big delivery teams out of India and Portugal, with presence in the US and Australia as well, making us truly global. And very excited to be one of Workday's largest innovation partners as well. We had a lovely call out at the Partner Summit yesterday, having built most of the Extend apps on the marketplace last year. So very, very exciting. Dan, you already talked a little bit about Aviva. Here's some numbers.
Yeah, so we implemented Workday, I think first UK implementation, actually. So we've been a customer since 2010. We started out with core HCM and recruitment. We've since added to that following an optimization journey in 22 to include talent. And we've also got Extend, and we're about to bring Vindley on board for our contingent worker solution. So yeah, we've been a Workday customer for quite some time.
Thank you. And Formula One.
We went live first with Workday in September 2022. A couple of phases. Next phase went live January 2023 with a good number of Workday products. Since then, we've gone live with most recently Hired Score. Before that, advanced compensation. We're a relatively small organisation, so around 850 employees, quite lean. It's just me in the systems team, which is nice. I don't really like people anyway. But headquartered in the UK, primarily UK employees as well, which keeps things simple. I don't envy Dan and a more global, a much larger organisation at least. So I like to keep things simple. As the slide notes there, we replaced a number of our systems when we went live with Workday, and changing our mindset from what those meant to what Workday meant has been a real challenge, and it's some of what I'll touch on today.
Thank you. So yes, let's get into storytelling. We've started a little bit on this already. Don't know if we have any questions. No, don't go to Q&A. So I'll go back to the actual title of today, because I want us to always think about innovation and unlocking lasting value. Can I just have a quick show of hands? How many of you have been live for more than 10 years?
They're in my team. But...
Okay, we've got one at the back there. How many of you have been live for more than 5 years? Okay, so most of you. And how many have been live for less than 5 years? All right. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So both Dan and Alastair are going to share a little bit more about their journey and how they got to where they are today. But as you have heard, they're very different organizations. And we did that on purpose, because we're all changing, we're all facing the same challenges, and we're all living in the same changing environment. And we want to make sure that you can connect to these stories, no matter how different your organization might actually be. So can you tell us a little bit more about how many people, how many countries you've touched on the products, when you went live, just so just to have
sure.
that bookmark done.
I'm going first, am I?
Yeah.
Yeah, you go first.
So we divested from 9 international organizations back in 22, which prompted and has prompted wholesale transformation across the organization. So right-sizing the business and focusing on the core markets where we can be 1 or 2 in terms of market position. And so that gave us an ideal opportunity to have a look at Workday. So I think we were the first to coin this optimisation phrase. We certainly went through a bit of a battle in doing it. So I think we've ironed out any wrinkles for any of you that want to go beyond us with Workday. But we had grown, I suppose, in our Workday implementation to about 9 instances across the globe. Everything was very complicated. We had different processes, benefits, as you would anticipate in every region. And so getting stuff done was really difficult and very expensive. And so we didn't take on new releases or updates or other stuff. We didn't have any job architecture, or rather the job architecture we did have was quite fragmented and inconsistent. We had about 10,000 job titles in the system at the time. And so we needed to take stock, consolidate, drive one way of doing things across the platform, and simplify our data and the state overall. So the main sort of impetus behind doing it was to drive efficiency and cost saving across the business. We actually didn't know how many, well, we had a rough idea about how many employees we had, but we had to keep checking through spreadsheets and sort of manual handling and stuff. And so being able to optimize, as we called it, and simplify things has enabled us to actually understand more about our workforce, more about where we're located and where we're invested, and make investment decisions based on that.
Thank you. How about you, Alastair?
Although we're still not a huge organisation, at the point Liberty Media bought F1, our company was about 350 employees, so we've over doubled in size in that time frame. And in that time as well, I would say the company has modernised in many respects, and HR needed to follow suit. I think many people assume that because of the commercial relationship with Formula One, it was an automatic decision that we would go to Workday, but actually those decisions were entirely separate. So it was an independent customer decision to choose Workday as our platform. And really, the I think big deciding factor there was the fact that it enabled us to take all of our disparate systems and processes. As you saw on that slide earlier, there was at least 4 systems that we were using for different things: payroll, absence, etc., and put them all together, and really gain some of the obvious efficiencies that are there to be had from just bringing all of your data and processes into one place.
Thank you very much. So how did you then decide where to go next? I speak to customers every day who really want to optimize, which is fantastic, but most of the time they just don't know where to start. How do you choose where to start when everything is connected and everything is kind of important?
Yeah, so for us, the core underpin, as always, is the data. And so, we needed to get our data straight in order to understand how we could transform the organization fundamentally. So that was the start point. We also needed to make some savings. So we had to reduce our costs as a function by about 25%. And so we needed to become much, much more efficient. And as an organization that was transforming, we needed to enable people to get, the information that they needed to make decisions about their representative parts of the organization. And so starting with the data, starting with getting our job architecture straight, not asking too many people's opinion in relation to what that needed to look like, was a massive win, because we could have been embroiled in a couple of years plus of discussion easily on that. But we actually managed to get through that in about 12 months. And then we were into starting to look at, how can we make the system simple to use? How can we drive automation so that, to the greater extent, and we're about 75% now self-service across the platform, people can get what they need, and then we can focus our time as a function on transforming the organization. So we were spending about, I would say, between sort of 70 and 80% of our time as a function on the administration of the day-to-day tasks that go through, ultimately Workday. And so by centralizing the support that we provide day-to-day, by cleaning up the system so that it can be driven by self-service, we put service now in as well. I don't know whether we're allowed to say that, but as a sort of a front end, and so driving case management and providing a great knowledge base, we have been able to completely change the way that we work as a function. So we have a central operations team now that take queries day to day and deal with any escalations. We've got partnering at a very senior level, and then we invest money into COEs that can help drive the business's performance, which is fundamentally my area. So we've got leadership, learning, talent, and recruitment, and then we've got operating model design, OD, tech, people change consultants that we'll deploy into the markets. All of these people can use data, and so they are able to have really clear conversations with the organization about how they can drive efficiency and cost reduction. It makes us much more commercial, much more part of kind of the future planning conversation that we need to have across the organization.
Awesome, thank you. So data first.
Data first.
If you have good data, you can have good processes.
Absolutely.
And if you can have good processes, you can
automate
have that and high adoption.
Absolutely.
And good self-service, because people have the data and the tools to actually self-serve.
Exactly.
So it sounds as if, I know, people would want to move beyond the let's fix our foundations, right? And it can be really frustrating when you come to Rise and you hear all about AI, and in-house you still have the conversation about fixing your foundations. I don't think there's a way around that. I think what we're learning here as well is how you get the business case approved to fix those foundations, right? It's about the story you're telling. It's not about you going to your executives and going, I need some money to fix my soup org or my job architecture. It's about how you tell that story to get to that endpoint, I think, to really make sure you can still focus on that. How about your story? What did you do first?
Yeah, I don't know if this really counts as optimization, but I was really determined after we went live not to lose sight of the things we all said we would fix post go live, because we all collect them as we go, right? And once you're live, it can be easy and tempting to say it'll be all right. We managed to go live without fixing those things, but actually I would say, back to the point that's already been said, those core foundational things are really important, and without focusing on those, you may end up with some problems later down the line. So that would be kind of, I guess, 1.1 focus. But beyond that, I think I had three things that I wanted to focus on after we'd gone live. The first was continuing the journey of taking things that were not in a system and bringing them in. So it sounds really simple, but the bit between when a candidate gets an offer and then their hire was still offline. So we hadn't implemented that when we went live with Workday. So one of the really early things I wanted to optimize was that onboarding journey, making sure that everything was digital. It's what you would expect if you were joining a tech company like F1. And I was really keen, having gone through a really paper-based process when I started, to give that digital experience to new starters. The other area that I knew needed some focus was wherever I felt pain and upset in the business. So the example in our environment is around our traveling staff. So for each event, a good 350 of our staff will go to that event to perform their job function. When they work over a race weekend, excuse me, they accrue time off in lieu. And that process for accruing and then using was not working very well. But actually, I mean, it worked fine, like it did what it needed to do, but people were fed up with how long it took and some of the, parts of it, the approval processes, etc. But it felt like the right place to start because that was one of the primary places that people were going to be interacting with the system. So I knew that if I lost them at that point, I wouldn't be able to engage them in other more interesting things that I wanted to work on. And I think the other key point that I knew needed some focus, again, it's foundational, but was around our processes that worked with other parts of the organization. And for me, one I really wanted to fix early on was our position management. At the start of the year, finance, HR departments, they agree headcount. They agree what positions they're going to recruit for. The data in terms of what was and wasn't approved was still outside of Workday. And then that process for getting it in wasn't working. And we had positions springing up left, right, and center. And then when we had to report quarterly to our finance team around what had been approved and why, the team that were responsible for that were not having a good time. So it was quite simple. But again, that position approval process within Workday, making sure that worked, making sure the right people within HR and within our payroll team who had their eye on what had been approved within the budget had a role in ensuring that what was approved should be approved, basically. So that was my initial focus, certainly. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. So two different approaches, right? One more holistic, one more focused on fixing some of those key pain points. And it's not to say you have to choose one, but what you can't do is hide behind the pain points and go, I will sort the other stuff out later, because that's when it snowballs, especially if you've been live for a long time on the system. To make sure, especially what you were describing, Dan, that it's not a one-time effort and it just you have to redo it again in a few years' time. What did you have to change anything in your organization, in your structures or in your governance, in your approach to make sure you continuously innovate rather than you let it sort of sit there and then you go and optimize again?
Yeah, all of the above, I think. So we changed our structure as a team. We created product management within the team. So we now have a Workday specialist who will, focus on how we're going to drive the platform forward and, what our approach needs to look like in response to our strategy overall. We got rid of all of the fragmented sort of discussion going on across the group in relation to what they wanted from Workday. And we centralized that into a monthly meeting. They also get together weekly in terms of smaller stuff that needs to happen more quickly. And so prioritization across the platform is much, much easier. We've also agreed on design principles. So across all of our regions now, we follow the same design principles. We move forward together. Nobody gets to say no in isolation. And so we keep the platform moving together. But, some of the stuff that's been talked about has been really important. So universally using position management, having one single source of sort of reporting, one central reporting team, has been really important. Continuing to drive efficiency and automation by creating process ownership globally. So we have one owner for each process. They are responsible for driving, innovation and improvement across that process. They'll then bring that to our operating committee and discuss what changes that they want to make. So everything has a drumbeat now, and we all work together within that drumbeat, as opposed to people going around the back and trying to get change done because they've got a relationship with somebody in the tech team. We also changed our tech team, changed our approach to the way that they work, to make sure that they could respond, that they were locked into our planning processes and could have some say in what we wanted to drive in terms of priority. So it's been a wholesale reorganization of the way that we drove the platform. It was utter chaos before. And so I'm sure some of you that have international businesses will be able to relate. Everybody wants to do it very slightly differently, just because they don't want to be dictated to by the group. We've had to be quite forceful and quite strong-handed in that, but it's definitely paid dividend.
Thank you. And I guess you had to. How long did it take for that as a cultural habit to establish itself?
I think we're still doing it, if I'm being honest about it. I think, so 22, we went live, having optimized the platform. I think we've seen the benefit. So we've reduced our costs by about 25% as a function. We are partnering differently with the business, and so the business can see the benefit. We've had some sort of reticent adoption in some parts of the organization, but they have been able to see the journey and the sort of the early wins that we've made in relation to different approaches, support that we can provide. And so people have come on the journey, some more reluctantly than others, I would say. But we're still practicing our approach and trying to get better at it all the time. We're still trying to go a bit faster. But yeah, I don't think it'll ever be done.
No, but I guess what I'm hearing is, again, things like design principles, you all know that they're important.
So
but
important,
how many of us write them, get them signed off, put them onto a really pretty slide, and then go, awesome, tick. But they need to be alive, I think, what you're saying.
No, they do. And your people leadership team need to buy into it.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are part of people leadership teams, they can be an interesting bunch. So, you've got to get these guys to rubber stamp and say, we're going to stand behind it. And then you've got to keep bringing them back to the design principles and saying, you agree to that. So we're not going to do that. And that's been a massive help, actually.
Thank you. Alastair, what was sort of the turning point for you to move from I'm fixing these 3 pain points to actually I'm on it, I'm on top of it, and I'm continuously improving?
I think it took a real change of mindset within the HR team. As I noted earlier, we moved from a world in which the systems that we had did not change or evolve to then being quite surprised by the pace of change that Workday has, if I'm honest. With the 2 releases a year was a real shock to us after we'd gone live, and the amount of things that were changing was more than we were anticipating as we had our kind of heads down in the implementation project. And I think the other challenge for us was that, as a fairly lean organization, as I think I've mentioned earlier, just me in HR tech, I cannot be across everything, and I need to rely on some others to help me with that, to see things that I cannot see. And in the kind of release world and being on top of what's coming, that is, if I'm honest, where I rely heavily on CloudRock. So when it comes to those release times, I'm saying to them, tell me what's coming, show me all of it, knowing that they have looked at everything and knowing our business are presenting to us the things that they might think are of interest or could be beneficial to us. And then I can go, okay, this I can see some value in, that not so much, this will be a now, that will be later down the line. But being able to see across the landscape and rely on other support in that has been really important for us.
Really, yeah, it's really good. It doesn't matter how you do it. You just need to enable these processes to be alive, whether that's in-house with a really amazing, strong team, whether that's working with partners. Very good. So this is the story, how they got to really good foundations. Now we're going to move into the next chapter where it becomes a little bit more exciting. How did you then use those foundations to fuel growth and innovation? So Dan, you've been quite humble there. You have achieved incredible adoption on Workday. The number I've been given is 75% of Aviva colleagues now self-serve, which is fantastic. Wow. Tell us how data and automation have helped you achieve that, and what impact it had on your HR operation. You mentioned earlier that you had to reduce costs, etc.
Yeah.
But I think that is really at the core of that whole exercise.
Oh yeah, it was totally at the core of the whole exercise. But the user experience just wasn't very good. People didn't go into Workday; they couldn't be bothered with it. We'd just get endless calls, asking for very simple transactions to be made. We were so surprised actually just by adopting position management, being able to reuse positions as a sort of very simple example, means that we don't have to go out for authorization for recruitment, and so leaders can fire up requisitions, authorize their own backfill requirements. But we have gone one step further, which is not a perfect solution by any stretch. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but we are driving strategic workforce planning across the organization. I would say that's the ambition. We've got as far as being able to sort of look out about 18 months and get a reasonably accurate resource plan. And what we do is preload positions into Workday so that they fire up notifications. Leaders get pre-authorized positions essentially to recruit, which is just dialed down the amount of administration massively overall. But we are also able to do change job in the system now really easily by using templates. And so leaders can do that without having to digest a Workday manual to make that possible. And then, all we need to do is to, centrally load positions to kind of feed the system, if you like. And we do that on a monthly basis. So we're constantly looking for ways to make the line manager's job much, much easier. I think that's our biggest task, because then they can get on with, growing the business and not really worrying about that stuff. If we can help line managers look further ahead and so anticipate the demand that they've got, then we can get ahead of that in supporting them with things like learning, with talent management, with obviously recruitment, which we've just talked about. We can talk to them about where best to invest across our organisation, location-wise, in relation to where talent's most easily sourced. So we've changed the dynamic from being one of order taker and bag carrier to strategic enabler and partner. But we're now playing with ServiceNow and how we can use workflow to make things much more simple. We're going to try and plumb stuff into Teams so that people can do it in the flow of work. We're teaching the organisation about skills. If you go and ask a line manager the skills they need in the future, they sort of shut down and go into some sort of shock. So we are bringing skills intelligence to them so that we can help them understand what the competition is doing in relation to the skills that they're recruiting. We can look at other organizations and say, this is how they're tackling the challenges that we have in the workforce that they are augmenting and changing and hiring and developing. And so we're able to give them a new language of skills to start thinking about. What do they want to divest? What do they want to invest in? How do they want us to support them with it? What are the time frames associated with that? So we're constantly looking for ways of lifting our heads, if you like, looking forward into the future, anticipating demand within the organization and utilizing the talent that we already have in order to fulfill that demand. So we came from a culture of cost containment. And so every year we used to make it, a reasonable number of redundancies. We now make almost no redundancies. And we reskill, upskill, redeploy across the organization using skills data that we've put against every role in the business. So we had 10,000 jobs, I mentioned. We now have about 1,400 distinct jobs. Each of those jobs has a skills profile attached to it. Colleagues, although they can't do that themselves just yet, we're working on that, will be able to see where they want to go next, the gap between where they are today and where they want to get to, and have an AI-powered learning pathway delivered to them. As a team at the moment, we can look at where we are going to reduce the workforce, the skills that those components of the workforce have, where they can be redeployed within the organization, and talk to line managers convincingly about their ability to be redeployed, which was the concern before, because line managers go, well, I don't want somebody that isn't able to hit the ground running and do the job that I need them to. I'd much rather go out and recruit, which is really expensive. We need to be able to say, no, actually, these individuals are great candidates because, we can start them on a learning pathway. They'll be ready by X, or this is what you'll need to do when they hit the ground in order to make sure that they can be successful. So, there's a constant, I suppose, process of thinking through how do we make the most efficient use of the resource that we have in our people, and how do we make the most efficient use of the tech that we've got at our disposal.
So you can tell Dan is very passionate about this topic.
I am very passionate, which is just as well, really.
This is off script, but I do have a lot of conversations with customers about, we want to switch on Skills Cloud. Can you do it?
Don't do it.
And my response usually is, do you have a skills strategy? And they go, no. What is that? So I might be slightly exaggerated, but only ever so slightly. So I think if you might be in this group of people, grab him after the session. I'm sure you can.
The most important thing is that you don't ask colleagues to pick the skills that they have, because that way no happiness lies.
Okay, there you go. Top tip. Alastair, long awaited. Tell us a little bit more about your HiredScore journey. How important was data to actually get the investment approved in the first place? You were one of the first EMEA customers to implement HiredScore.
Yep.
We were all super excited at CloudRock when you told us, so that we could be part of that journey. Yep. And how did the investment then help transform talent acquisition for you? Yeah.
So, data was absolutely paramount to getting it signed off. It was a problem that I knew had existed at our company for some time. And it's really a product of the kind of discrepancy between the size of our organization, so about 800 employees, but the size of the brand. So we have around 800 million fans worldwide. On average per year, we have about 150 job requisitions, but around 78,000 job applicants. So that's on average 520 per role, with a talent acquisition team of 3.7 FTE. So there are the numbers, right? Now, it's all pretty simple, but it's hard-hitting, isn't it? I tell you that story in a matter of seconds, and you immediately understand the problem that we were facing. So then we've got a choice with three options. We do nothing, and as a result of that, risk missing some of the stellar candidates that are applying for our jobs. I was convinced and knew from anecdotal evidence that we were losing some of them. They were being sifted out through some of the more blunt or crude methods of sifting that the TA team were having to resort to just to get the numbers down. That didn't feel like an acceptable position to me. So the other alternatives then are hire more people into talent acquisition to do some of that sifting for you, or to start looking at a smarter solution. This had been on my mind before Workday had acquired HiredScore, but when I saw HiredScore, I immediately brought those two things together and had a story to tell to my senior stakeholders around what it could do for us, how it could help, and how it could really transform our business. So I saw HiredScore first in May 2024. It was at Elevate in London, and as soon as I saw it, I thought, we've got to go for it. We acquired it in the October of that year, and we went live in May this year. And as far as I'm aware, at least the first customer in the UK and Ireland to go live since the acquisition. A fact I'm very proud of. Now, we're a relatively light organisation, so we don't have many job requisition types and other things like that. The implementation was therefore relatively straightforward, I would say, and that definitely helped. But we had some challenges along the way, for sure. But I think the thing that's really interesting is, since then, the impact that it's had on our business. Before making the acquisition and before going live, there were 3 key things that I wanted to see improvements on. And none of them will be a surprise to you, but screening time, time to fill, and agency spend. I wanted to see reductions in all 3 of those. And I'm happy to report in the first 2. So screening time, and important here is some context. So in that time, 2 out of 4 of the TA team have moved on, not because we've made them redundant, because we didn't need them anymore, but because they've moved on to other better opportunities. So the team has gone down from 3.7 to 2, but we have still reduced screening time by 20% since we've gone live, which I think is really fantastic. We have also reduced time to fill from an average of 70 days to 60, which I think, again, in that context is really good. The third, agency spend, I think it's too early to tell, but in time, when the TA team are maybe up to full strength, we'll see more improvements there. But yeah, as I say, you can see that data, not really complex data, but those key things were known to us, and we knew our baseline, we knew what improvement looked like, and that's really helped both get the approval to purchase, but also to demonstrate that it was worthwhile to make the purchase after the event.
Thank you. So if anybody here is thinking about hired score, he's your guy to talk to afterwards. We've only got 3 minutes left, so I'll do 2 super quick questions. Dan, obviously you have a very well-defined career management strategy. Do you see AI helping in future with this?
Yeah, totally. So the point about skills, so we want to use skills intelligence to infer skills profiles for colleagues. That's the first use of AI, and so it can look at LinkedIn profile and the data that we hold in Workday, and then we want to validate those skills in Teams, so colleagues can do that in the flow of work. And then this point about career paths is the really key one. So we'll do some top-down stuff in seeding new skills into the organisation. So, for instance, for AI, where we see that being a sort of a critical skill for roles. But we'll also enable colleagues to grab hold of learning-driven career pathways to help them, help us drive mobility across the organisation. Okay.
Tip top.
Yep.
Last question for both of you. One top piece of advice for everybody here: how they can look to transform and unlock that driving and consistent and long-lasting value from Workday. Top tip. Alastair?
Don't lose sight of your foundations. In the immortal words of C.S. Lewis, the highest does not stand without the lowest. A plant needs its roots underground for it to really shine.
Oh, I like that.
Very profound.
Very profound. Follow that, Dan. Top tip.
I would say just don't customize this. It's not worth it. Customize to your demise. I think that's the phrase I would use.
Very good. I'm going to throw my own in off script again. But I ran a session a couple of years ago, I think in Barcelona actually, about the top 5 tips how to get the most out of Workday. And after the session, loads of people asked me, what if you had to pick one of those top 5? And it was governance. It was the most boring one of the 5. You need to have your governance in place. Just do it. It's not very difficult. I'm really sorry. Well, actually, I'm not that sorry. It was a really great conversation. And thank you to Dan and Alastair. We've got 1 minute for questions in the room. But please, as I said, we will hang around for a little bit after the session as well. We hope you found it useful. Any questions anybody would like to ask in the room?
Did you have any trouble convincing people to use self-service? And if so, how did you overcome it?
Actually, the nervousness wasn't necessarily widespread. It was amongst people leadership team, senior leaders. They didn't think that having a self-service driven solution would actually be more efficient for leaders. I mean, ultimately, you just have to rip the plaster off. I think your point on governance is a really good one. Don't make decisions by committee. Don't ask for permission. Just get on with stuff, because we are the experts. And I think it's so easy to get lost in a whirlwind of conversation in relation to fears that are not necessarily backed with evidence around this sort of thing. Leaders just don't want the hassle of dealing with it going wrong. So just build confidence in being able to deliver. And, that comes back to your business case and all of that kind of stuff. Happy to share more. But just rip the plaster off. Go for it.
we're at time. Thank you so much for coming. But yes,
Thank you very much.
grab us if you'd like to. Thank you.
Thank you.